9. May 1945, Munich, Schwanthaler. In a scorched school ledger scavenged from the ruins, Karl writes, "The war is not over. It has moved into our kitchens, our files, and our mouths." He hides the page beneath loose floorboards. The apartment is half a room because the other half is missing. The wall stops and the sky begins. The sirens have stopped. The hunger has not. The landscape is rubble. The statistics do not look like mountains. They look like cubic meters. They look like work orders. They look like numbers assigned to piles that used to be streets. The city issued directives to clear 12 million cubic meters. The women's hands did most of it. Trümmerfrauen. They balance bricks like loaves. They make belts out of salvage. They stand in lines and count stones. An Allied occupation report from June 1945 notes devastation so complete the terminology of measurement fails. It counts bridges, slopes, vents. It recommends shovels. It recommends discipline. It recommends discipline. It does not recommend how to sleep under ceilings that are not there. Curfew begins at 9. Americans on Shermans roll over cobbles. They post signs in English and German. Proclamations announce surrender, the banning of the party, the return of legality. The orders are clipped to poles that stand next to photographs of lost persons. The photographs multiply. They have faces and dates. The space below for last seen fills with smoke. On 12 May, Karl goes to the police station with a snapshot of his younger brother. Last seen January 1945, somewhere east. A clerk writes on a form. The clerk stamps the form. The stamp is new. The form is old. The arithmetic is simple. One brother went east. One brother did not come back. Eventually, the mathematics of missing persons turns into the mathematics of presumed dead. There is a form for that too. The first summer after the capitulation tastes of dust. He writes this in a letter he never sends. Bread is grey and thin. A grease spot on paper is a luxury. Eggs are rumors. He uses a collection of ration cards like a prayer. The card is for 1,550 calories, then 1,080, then less. The British zone reports the hunger winter. The numbers dip below 1,000 for some. The stomach knows the difference between policy and physics. The black market begins where the ration ends. Cigarettes become arithmetic. 1 lucky strike equals 2 loaves. 4 equals a sack of potatoes. A pack equals soap, meat. Cigarettes are money because money is not. Reichsmarks multiply. Prices do not. The occupied economy is equations drawn in chalk on crate lids in cellars, in courtyards, behind curtains. Allied intelligence summaries describe a vigorous and resilient system of barter, lubricated by tobacco and opportunity. The word resilient murmurs with approval. The word opportunity is not asked to explain itself. There are soldiers everywhere, but authority is concentrated. Americans on bicycles, British in armored cars, French with tricolour armbands. Soviet patrols move through places where the line changed many times. The war ended quickly on maps. It ended slowly in the bones. Fear of retribution hangs in corridors. Some fear the Allies. Some fear neighbours. Some fear the victims who are supposed to be gone. Nothing disappears that cleanly. The first weeks, Karl avoids the barracks. He walks past the requisitioned brewery and tries not to look at the men posting the new street names. He keeps his eyes on the ground. He joins the line for soup. He makes a list: coal, nails, shoes. He marks each item with a date. Sometimes he has to tear out the date and leave the item. Dates are easier to replace. A photograph dated 3 June shows a row of women lifting bricks into carts. Their scarves are white. Their hands are not. An occupation officer notes, the exceptional diligence of the female population. He does not note that those hands wash the dead out of stairwells. He does not note that the women do this because there are no men. Between July and September, Munich city records show 18,000 requests to trace missing persons. 1 in 3 fails for lack of detail. Somewhere near Kurland. Last letter from the Vistula. Prisoner transport believed heading west. The geography runs backward in time as the letters do the same. The mathematics of distance becomes the mathematics of absence, a variable forever unsolved. On 24 August, Karl writes in the ledger, "Every day is a calm that feels like glass. If you touch it with the wrong word, it will break. There is one word that breaks everything. Party. The Allied proclamations make it past. The party is dissolved. Its symbols are banned. Its finances are confiscated. It is dispersed like the rubble, and yet as present. This is the arithmetic of denazification. All Germans in positions of authority receive forms. Fragebogen. The documents run to... They ask if you were a member. They ask if you donated to organizations. They ask who your neighbors were and what they did. They ask if you wore a uniform, if you taught a class, if you published a piece. They ask if you said yes when you should have said no. The mathematics is bureaucratic. It requires addition. It requires subtraction. It does not like fractions. The categories are 5. Hauptschuldig, belastet, minder belastet, Mitlaufer, entlastet. Major offenders, offenders, followers, exonerated. They are labels pinned to files in brown folders. They are also sentences. They are durations. They are meals lost. They are jobs not given. They are houses not returned. They are names written on doors and then erased and written again. He receives his questionnaire in October. The envelope is thin. The questions are not. He writes that he worked as an accounts clerk at a municipal building. He writes he was not a party member. It is true. He writes he donated to the winter relief because everyone did. It is true. He writes he attended one lecture by a party man because attendance was required. It is true. He writes he kept his mouth shut. It is true and also not enough. An occupation report from Munich, November 1945, notes, "Populace displays eagerness to disassociate from party while simultaneously minimizing knowledge of crimes. Routine invocation of compulsion and fear. Pattern indicates a normalization of followers' category as a civic refuge." The word refuge is dry. It is also accurate. At a Spluchkammer hearing in January 1946, a school superintendent explains he joined the party in 1937 to keep his job. He says he never raised his hand in class except to greet the day. He says he assigned homework and avoided the rest. The record notes his tie. The record notes his wife. The record notes he will be classified as Mitlöfer and fined. The fine equals 3 months' salary. He promises new lessons. He returns to the same desk. The mathematics of guilt requires the mathematics of need. The Allies have prisons. They also need postal clerks. They need engineers. They need waterworks. They need waterworks. The city needs electricians. The trains need drivers. The coal needs to be moved. Without specialists, no light. Without light, no dinner. Without dinner, no politics. By the end of 1946, in the American zone, more than 5 million questionnaires are processed. Many are deferred. Many are for minor positions. The press begins to call it paperwork without purpose. The Allies begin to call it that too. An O.M. Gus memo in March 1947 says, "Denazification increasingly perceived as obstacle to stabilization. Recommend pragmatic relaxation." This recommendation sits next to a list of prices. a list of wages, a list of calories per region. He goes to the Spruchkammer to witness. His neighbor, a dentist, is classed as minderbelastet. He is assigned a year of restrictions but continues to pull teeth. He has pliers, he knows where the nerves run. The panel nods, the rates are posted. There is a ledger of those not returned. Some are in prison, some in camps, some in the East. Their wives supplement with barter. Stamps go unused. Children go to school without books, and then come home and do not do homework because the candles are already burned. Into not do homework because the candles are already burned. Into this algebra walk people. They arrive at stations with names that used to be maps. They come from Silesia, Pomerania, East Prussia, the Sudetenland. They carry letters they wrote to themselves as proof of who they were before a line moved and they were not. Refugees, expellees, vertribene. By February 1946, Bavaria's Interior Ministry reports 1.6 million refugees within its borders. Schleswig-Holstein's figures are similar proportions. Towns triple overnight. In the archives, the municipal minutes of a small town near Augsburg list allocation of new residents by room. 1 room, 8 square meters, 4 people. 1 unheated kitchen, 2. An attic, 1. The arithmetic is relentless. The arithmetic is cruel because it considers only space, not the noise made by grief. Karl helps a family from Breslau carry their chest up 3 flights. The chest is mostly empty. The mother says, "We were told to bring only what we could carry." The father looks at the floor. The boy is 12. He holds a war medal he found in a ditch. He asks what it is worth. The adults do not answer. Bundesarchiv records of town councils in 1946 show disputes over straw allotments and the distribution of bed frames. They show threats of violence when neighborhoods are assigned newcomers. They show gestures of decency and mutual aid. They show the mathematics of resentment. We who endured the bombings versus you who bring lice. You who are not from here versus us who have less because of you. The numbers do not soothe, they inflame. He writes, "At the water pump, the women fight in whispers. Where were you then? Where are you from? The questions do not need answers to do damage." Outside town, behind barbed wire not yet taken down, there are camps. Displaced persons live there. Jews, Poles, Ukrainians, Italians, Dutch. Some were prisoners, some were forced laborers, some are stateless and will remain so for years. The camp call letters shift. DP4, DP9. The names of the camps are sometimes the names of places where the bodies were stacked. Bergen-Belsen is a camp again. Landsberg. Thurenwald. The Allied reports describe the disconnected worlds of camp and town. They describe gates, guards, food distributions, dances, songs. They describe the market days when the barbed wire is a trade barrier. 50 cigarettes buys wool, 10 buys an apple. The ledger of exchange crosses lines of language and law. In June 1946, a team from the American military government visits the DP camp at Feldafing. They take statements. They note a striking vitality among survivors. They note the post-trauma dailiness, lines for soup and then lines for visas. They note a music evening where Yiddish songs carry their own arithmetic, numbers for the missing, the names of towns that don't exist. Karl is sent by his office to deliver a stack of forms to the DP liaison. He waits outside a barracks. A woman with a scarf walks past. She meets his eye for a fraction of a second. He looks away, he looks back. She keeps walking. He is ashamed because he understands a fragment of what she might ask if he were worth her time. He is ashamed because there will be no question and no answer. He writes later, "In town we speak of the camps in the third person. We place them on the other side of grammar. Some Germans visit the camps to trade, some to witness, some to apologize. Many do not. Many avert. Some approach. and then turn around before the gate. Archival interviews from the 1970s, recorded slowly when the economy had grown and the present could risk listening to the past, echo with this emptiness. "We saw the thin faces and we kept our eyes on the potatoes," one woman says. "We knew and did not know," another says. The mathematics of denial uses subtraction until the page is blank. The Allied re-education programs are thorough and improvised. Schools receive new books. Museums mount exhibits of basics, the Constitution, free speech, parties without uniforms. There are lectures on civics that feel like sermons, and sermons that feel like apologies. Carl reads a pamphlet. What is democracy? He underlines a sentence that says, "Democracy is the slow substitution of rules for force." He writes, "We like rules. Force was faster." The winter of 1946 to 47 brings the cold into the lungs. The coal shipments are insufficient. The rivers freeze. The mines slow. Trains peel their paint to burn for heat. The newspapers run thin. The caloric arithmetic begins again. Children collapse at school. Teachers shorten lessons to conserve energy. The black market pulses. Cigarette prices lift. The Allied reports are unemotional. Incidents of edema increased. Mortality rates augmented. Population mood characterized by exhaustion and low political engagement. He trades a family heirloom watch for a sack of beets. He considers the watch a loss. He does not consider the beets a gain. His notebook has more numbers and fewer words. In a village in Lower Saxony, a truck arrives with sacks of flour marked with English words. A pastor writes in the parish register, "Foreign aid brought like grace in a language we did not speak." The record is neat. The sacks are absorbed into bread within a day. There are hearings and trials in faraway chambers where cameras click. There are hangings photographed and turned into proof. There is radio. The occupation authorities announce verdicts. The names are read calmly. The crimes are described calmly. The reactions are not. He listens to a broadcast from Nuremberg, then to the news from Dachau's trials for camp staff. He sits with his hands on his knees. He hears the words medical experiments, execution, slave labor. He experiences something called recognition and something called self-defense. The two balance on the rim of his coffee cup, which contains nothing at all. He goes back to the files. He works at an office now tasked with allocating reconstruction materials. Nails, roofing tar, wire, cement, lumber. They come from Allied depots and are distributed according to forms filled with numbers, population, damage, priority jobs. Requests multiply. Supplies lag. The mathematics of fairness becomes a habit of triage. An Allied intelligence summary from early 1947 notes, "A maturing civic competence among municipal staff, composed in part of former bureaucrats." It is another way to say that denazification concluded in pragmatism. It is another way to say that people who once put papers in folders marked race now put papers in folders marked roof. On 20 June 1948, he waits in another line. The queue is to exchange money. The currency reform arrives with the weight of a new word, Deutschmark. It is not morality, it is paper. It is also chemistry. It changes everything at once. The black market stalls go quiet overnight. Prices appear in shop windows. Goods appear behind the glass. The arithmetic of cigarettes declines. The arithmetic of receipts increases. In the morning, he stands in front of a bakery and sees bread for sale without shadows. He does not buy. He reads the sign that lists the price and feels numbers become his language again. He will always understand numbers better than words. The reform triggers hunger and anger in other places. It provokes the Soviets. In June, the roads to Berlin are cut. The planes begin to hum. The airlift is a logistics poem written in coal and sugar. The mathematics of altitude and weight, of tonnage per day, of sorties per hour. Berliners stand in courtyards and watch. He reads a newspaper about the airlift and circles the word solidarity. Later, he will learn that solidarity was a strategy. He will learn that strategies themselves need calories. Marshall Plan shipments arrive in 1948 and 1949. Food, fuel, machinery, sugar, powdered milk, oil. Crates marked with USA and hearts carved by pocket knives. American policy is split between punishment and investment. The Cold War needs allies. Allies need wages. Wages create groceries. Groceries create quiet. Factories begin to run at speeds unthinkable 2 years prior. The rubble that is not moved is used to fill foundations. Old steel becomes new scaffolding. The IG Farben building, enormous and unashamed, becomes offices for the administration that organizes the rebirth of its fragments. Decartelization is a word that shows up in minutes and disappears in warehouses. Firms split and hire back the same men. Names change, ledgers do not. Carl finds a place in a machine works outside the city. The factory turns out compressors and pumps, things that are convincing because they move air and water and do not require metaphors. He is a purchasing clerk with a pencil behind his ear. He knows which supplier has real bolts and which has counterfeit ones. He knows who to call in Augsburg for rubber seals and who in Stuttgart for ball bearings. He knows that a man in his office returned from internment last month and that the supervisor told him, "Please do not talk politics at work." He writes, "The new democracy is a ledger with columns labeled stabilities and truth. We add figures to the first. We leave the second for later." The political mathematics are not hidden. The American officers ask about votes and churches and unions. They ask whether communists will win local elections. They consult charts. The founders of new parties visit the offices and put pamphlets on desks. The CDU's language is steady. The SPD speaks of justice with bread crusts in its hands. The Communist Party prints posters and is watched closely by police. The public mood moves toward sobriety. It moves toward full plates. In 1949, a basic law is promulgated. It is not called a constitution because the division of the country makes even the title political. It is still a constitution. Newspapers print its articles in small types. The articles are promises. They are also instructions. Dissent is guaranteed. Dignity is inviolable. No one reads the footnotes about exceptions. No one needs to. The mood is exhausted and agreeable. Registers list the reintegration of public servants. The 131er are noted, those who fell under Article 131. Civil servants of the Reich who lost their posts. The law of 1951 permits their return. The mathematics of continuity is explicit. Stability over revision. Experience over renewal. The new state hires familiar faces. Files are updated, not erased. School books arrive with clean lines. The chapters on the recent past keep their distance. They speak of Hitler and the war as if a wave passed through a village while everyone was sleeping. Bombings are described in detail. The incendiaries, the phosphorus, the ash. The expulsions are given pages with photographs of children on roads. The crimes have less texture. Perpetrators are named in the singular. Neighbors are opponents. Teachers who were teachers then teach part of this and omit part of this. They are underpaid and overburdened and sometimes afraid. Carl's daughter brings home a book about the Middle Ages and an appendix about 1933-45. He reads it at the table while she copies arithmetic tables. He writes, "We will teach this history so our children can pass exams. We will not teach it so we can pass judgment." Public commemorations return with somber tone. Churches fill on Volkstrauertag. The sermons speak of national dead. of sacrifices, of suffering. They do not eliminate the shame. They absorb it into a larger word. At a ceremony in 1952, a speaker says, "Our shared sorrow shall bind us." The speech is printed in the newspaper the next day. In the margin, Carl writes, "Shared with whom?" Across the border that is not called a border, a different arithmetic is calculated. In the East, anti-fascism is the official language. The GDR claims the mantle of resistance. The class of perpetrators is bourgeois. The class of victims is modern. Trials occur. A new police force is built by veterans of the old. The rhetoric is clean. The reality is not. Karl's cousin in Leipzig writes carefully on thin paper. "We were told the past was a Western problem. We were handed a new flag and asked to forget the last two. The Cold War begins to feel like a climate rather than an event. The bombs that might fall from the sky are theoretical. The prosperity that grows on the ground is not. The Wirtschaftswunder enters capital letters. The wonder is not magic. It is investment, labor, demographics. The mathematics of rebuilding multiplied by the mathematics of forgiving people with certain pasts. The factory posts numbers, daily output, weekly targets, quarterly profits. The union posts numbers, dues, members, strike votes that do not become strikes. The newspaper posts numbers, new housing units, phones installed, cars produced, surplus in the budget. The surplus is absorbed by roads. The roads lead to places whose names were not spoken for years because there was nothing there to see but the inside of your own head. He rides a bicycle to work until he can ride a bus. He rides a bus until he can ride a train. The train window frames fields and cranes, and a world where brick is now an abstract noun that belongs to accounting rather than shelter. In the quiet of the morning, he opens the ledger he still keeps. He writes down prices as a discipline. He does not know why he needs this. He writes 4 pounds of sugar, 240, boots, on ma. New radio, too much. The people who return from camps return slowly to public conversation. They appear in the papers as names. They campaign for memorials. They give testimony in proceedings that both expose and limit. The trials of a few commandants and guards are not the trials of millions of bystanders. The bystanders go to work. They pay taxes. They become the electorate of a state that was created to avoid the conditions that had allowed them to become bystanders. In 1958, police raid the homes of suspected Auschwitz staff. Files appear on desks. Investigators, some with clear consciences and some with compromised pasts, stack documents. They will become the Frankfurt trials. They will become attention. For a while, the past flickers in the present like a signal from a damaged line. The courtrooms are lit brightly. Witnesses speak. Judges weigh. Citizens read in the evening and shake their heads and say, "We did not know it was like that." Some say nothing. Some walk around the table to wind the radio to a different station. He has a colleague, a gentle man with a quiet laugh, who has a number tattooed on his forearm and who does not roll up his sleeves even in the hottest afternoon. The colleague is Polish and a citizen now, and does not talk about it except once when a machine guard cuts a finger and there is blood, and the silence in the room is honest. Later, in the records of the factory, there is a note. Shift halted for 10 minutes due to incident. The arithmetic of minutes is not the arithmetic of the heart. Karl gets a promotion. He becomes the man who signs the forms that buy the machines, that make the parts, that move the cars, that carry the people who do not speak about certain things. He does this well. He is not special and therefore typical. In 1961, the wall goes up. He listens to the radio. He hears the concrete set. He hears the words protective barrier. He hears the words protective barrier. He hears the words prison. He writes, "We have made 2 rooms out of 1 ruined house." He understands now that mathematics can be used to divide as well as add. On Sundays, the family visits a rebuilt church. The pastor speaks about labor and justice. He mentions reconciliation. The sermon is subtle. It suggests that guilt shared is not guilt erased. Parents exchange glances and nod. They do not say what they are nodding at. There are also small stories that do not enter the files. A man who was denunciated in 1944 lives on the 2nd floor and never looks anyone in the eye. A woman who painted slogans on a wall in 1942 now runs a daycare and sings lullabies with sharp consonants. The baker whose apprentice left in 1941 and returned in 1955 with a limp says nothing about nations. He raises his prices and lowers them later because everyone remembers. Occupation reports fade into national reports. Allied intelligence becomes domestic security. The Bundesarchiv receives pallets of folders. They are labeled, tied, shelved. The smell of paper ages. The archivists are conscientious. They wear white gloves. They open histories as carefully as radiologists consider films. The files show patterns, proclamations that were ignored, orders that were followed too well, a public that learned to live with contradictions. Denazification was never a courtroom for a nation. It was a device. It measured what could be measured. It created categories that could be counted. In the end, the arithmetic of guilt resolved into the algebra of memory. Unknowns remained. Into the 1960s, the students begin to ask their parents questions at dinner. This is a different hunger. It is large, and for a while it is unsatisfiable. They read texts from the time. They read new critical lectures. They attend seminars. They accuse, sometimes clumsily and sometimes fairly. The past emerges into present tenses. The children write in ink. The parents reach for pencils that can be erased. Carl listens to his son ask where he was in 1938. He says he was at a desk. His son asks what he did in 1942. He says he filled in numbers. His son asks if he knew. He says he knew enough to be ashamed and not enough to be brave. He looks at his hands and understands that they will always be empty of the right gesture. In the East, a document is written about the anti-fascist tradition of the working class. It is distributed by the million. It is placed in school satchels next to bread. In the West, a document is written about the continuity of law and the safeguards that will prevent the return of dictatorship. It is placed in school satchels next to mathematics. Both countries roll forward on bearings made in factories that once made other things. The post-war settlement enters architecture. The rows of new apartments, the Siedlungen, are built of standard parts. They are easy to heat. They contain bathrooms. They allow for privacy to be stable. In these rooms, people store the objects that will become heirlooms to grandchildren who cannot imagine standing in a line for milk under a burned sky. In these rooms, people also store objects wrapped in rags that they do not put on display. One afternoon in 1968, he opens a drawer and finds the school ledger from 1945. He reads the first page and knows exactly why he hid it. He knows exactly why he did not destroy it. He considers burning it now. He does not. He knows that an archive is always someone's dangerous honesty pressed between the pages of someone else's statistics. There is a photograph of him from 1955 in a suit that fits badly. He is standing in front of the new factory gate. There is a photograph of him from 1970 at a union picnic, holding a paper plate with a sausage and a roll. There is no photograph of him in 1945 because nobody had film, and some truths do not develop, even when exposed to light. The refugee family from Breslau settled in a flat on the edge of town. The boy with the medal grew up and became a clerk in a different office. His parents died in their sleep, years apart. They were buried with their birthplaces written on their stones. It does not help. It is one more arithmetic. The sum of this place and that place equals not belonging anywhere. The mathematics of expulsion does not permit tidy remainders. It leaves decimals that repeat to the horizon. He sees a man from his youth in a newspaper. The man wrote editorials in 1936. He writes editorials now. The words are different. The voice is the same. He reads letters to the editor from young men who wish their grandfathers would speak, and from old men who wish their grandsons would listen. He chooses silence, because silence requires fewer revisions. And yet there are confessions. They are small and almost private. A co-worker tells him he forged a certificate in 1943 to save someone from the factory transport list. He tells this at a Christmas party after 2 glasses of schnapps, and then adds that he also denounced a man in 1942 because he wanted his bicycle. He says the second thing faster. He says it like a cough. Later, in a notebook, Carl writes, "We are a country of ledger entries. The credits do not cancel the debits. They coexist. He is now a supervisor." He attends meetings where procurement strategies are discussed in terms that could also be used for history, allocation, scarcity, risk, oversight. The difference is that the present is a spreadsheet, not a moral test. He is relieved by this. He is also unnerved. One evening, he attends a talk at the Volkshochschule. The speaker is a historian with a stack of documents from the Bundesarchiv, copies with underlines. He explains in clear German how denazification worked and did not. He shows a table of categories. He explains the number of Hauptschuldige was small because the system was designed to reduce. He shows that many offenders became followers, and many followers became exonerated. He calls it the mathematics of stability. He is booed and applauded. The city paper summarizes the event the next day with the headline, "No Future Without Truth." The question mark carries the entire controversy like a bucket. Carl walks home through streets that are now 2 generations old. The trees have matured. The facades are clean. The city is beautiful in a way that suggests a past without scars. He knows this is not true. He knows the scars are internal and shared. He knows that some people have them like tattoos, visible and involuntary. Others have them like hairline cracks in fine porcelain, only visible when held up to the right light. He writes, "The war after the war was fought in attics and basements, in civil registries and ration offices, in camps and kitchens. It was fought in the mouths that did not open when they should have, and in the files that closed when they should not have." He keeps a folder labeled Correspondence. It contains his own denazification file, his exchange certificates from 1948, his first pay stub from the factory, ration cards with corners torn off, 2 pages of notes about a DP camp visit he never sent to anyone, a pamphlet from a memorial service in 1953 where a rabbi spoke and the crowd listened without coughing. It contains, tucked in the back, the photograph of his brother in uniform cut to fit a wallet that wore out and was replaced in 1950. On 9 May 1975, he sits at the kitchen table with the ledger in front of him and a cup of coffee with milk. He writes, "The war is not over because I have not finished making the necessary entries." He listens to the news about a treaty with Poland that acknowledges borders, and he thinks about the family from Breslau. He has not seen them in years. He remembers the father's hands, the way he always wiped them on a cloth before entering a room even when they were clean. In 1985, he sees a televised speech by a president and a chancellor at a cemetery that contains the past in a way that makes words explode. He turns off the television. He does not want to add another argumentative layer to his thoughts. He wants to preserve the shape of his own complicity for another day. The 1990s arrive, and the wall is gone. The archives open in the east. Files move into the light. Newspapers publish documents. Names appear with numbers. People are outed as informants. People are vindicated. A different mathematics is calculated. Collaboration in a different system. It is a mirror. It is dizzying. He is now old and watches young people read paper like detectives. He is not threatened. He is tired. He hopes they will be kind and knows that hope is not an argument. The factory reorganizes. The name above the gate changes again. The compressors and pumps are now components in a global supply chain with the geography of a whisper. Munich to Singapore to Detroit to Poznan. He signs forms in a language that remains German but is more and more arithmetic. He reads about compensation schemes for forced laborers. He donates. He knows that money is not restitution. He does it anyway because money is also mathematics, and mathematics is the only language he trusts. He attends a small commemoration held by the city at the location of a former subcamp of Dachau. The grass is cut. There is a plaque. The text is correct. It is brief. A group of schoolchildren shuffle, listen, look at their shoes, their phones. Then one of them raises a hand and asks a question that is not a question. Were you there? The guide answers in the plural. We were here. It is ridiculous and true. The city draws up a new curriculum. The book in his granddaughter's satchel is different. It names more names. It shows photographs he did not want to see. It describes the complicity of neighbors. It includes the expulsions and the bombings in a pattern that does not use them as excuses. It makes the students uncomfortable. This is a goal. This is progress. This is also a burden passed on. He writes in the ledger, "We have become better at telling the story. We have not become better at living with it." He makes a list of the mathematics of the post-war, the mathematics of food, calories per day, ration cards per person, the price of a cigarette in potatoes, the slope of hunger across months, the mathematics of shelter, rooms allocated to bodies, meters to blankets, piles of bricks to meters of wall, roofs per street. The mathematics of guilt, categories in files, fines levied, hours served, names struck, names restored. The mathematics of expulsion, trains per station, bundles per family, rooms per newcomer, nights to acceptance. The mathematics of denial, we didn't know, multiplied by we could have known, divided by we needed to survive, equals a remainder that goes by many names. The mathematics of the Cold War, miles of airlift, tons of coal, votes per party, ministries staffed by men who once wore other badges. He knows the list is arrogant. It leaves out the feelings. He writes it anyway. Some nights he is awakened by the sound of nothing. This is how silence announces itself. He thinks about his brother, about the people in the DP camp, about the ex-police boy with the medal, about the dentist who kept his pliers, about the superintendent who kept his desk. He thinks about the American lieutenant who asked him, "Did you think it would end differently?" He did not answer then. He will not answer now. It is not all heaviness. There is laughter. There are picnics in parks that did not exist. There are songs on radios that seem to say, "You are here now, and that is enough." There is a softness to grandchildren's cheeks that proves something like the future. There is coffee in a cup that is not chipped. There is a bus line that arrives when the timetable says it will. These are not small things. They are the peace that was demanded and delivered. He does not kiss the ground. He stands on it. He boxes the ledger in 1999 and labels it "How shalt ought." He knows this is a lie. He knows the household to which it belongs is not just the apartment. It is the city, the region, the whole geography of what he endured and what he caused and what he failed to stop. He makes one more entry on an undated page, his handwriting now softened by age. I was not brave. I was not cruel. I was not a rescuer. I was not a rescuer. I was like everyone I knew. That is the danger. He leaves the box on the top shelf of a cupboard. He tells his daughter where it is. He tells her the first page is the only part that matters. She nods and does not ask why. She has learned how to listen to his silences, which are the only speeches he is qualified to give. He dies quietly in a month without politics. His granddaughter opens the box one afternoon when the light is gentle. She finds the ledger. She reads the opening line. She recognizes the thesis. She understands that the front line after 1945 ran through his memory and his paperwork, not across a battlefield.